You probably already know that one of the best things you can do for your online business is to start an email list, put something out there of value, get subscribers, and everybody tells you that. What most people don't tell you is, well, okay, now that they've subscribed, what do you do? And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about building a welcome and nurture list to help you onboard new email subscribers. Now, there's multiple ways to do this. What I'm going to show here is the way that I do it. I'll mention a couple of things that other people do, and I kind of found that this works best for my type of business, but there may be exceptions for you. We'll discuss a couple of those. So before we get going, I just wanted to make a little note. Next week on June 29th, I'm going to be traveling, so I won't be going live then. So if you're looking for something on the day, it won't be there because I'll be someplace else. And second, I want to invite you, since we're talking about email lists, to download this PDF I have of the top 10 questions about a high converting website. And you can find that on this page, suburbiapress.com/questions. So it's absolutely free. And then once you sign onto that, you not only will you get the ebook that'll help you out, but also you'll see what the sequence and strategy is that I'm about to describe here, how I implement that and how it can work for you. So it's not only just a ebook that gives you answers to these questions, but there's value in getting on people's email lists and seeing what emails they send, what they tell you, or what they tell you that maybe you don't want to hear or do want to hear. So see how well people stick to the topic of what their lead magnet is about. Just a little bit of a hint. All right, so let me go ahead and hide these little things. And of course, that link will be in the description below. And let me go ahead and get started here. All right, so let's talk about onboarding new email subscribers. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the resources that you need, how to onboard new subscribers, and that's really it. We're going to have little subtopics of each one of these things, but I wanted to keep this lesson really simple. So you're going to need an email service or a CRM, a customer relationship manager, and it must have the following features. So tags, these are things that you add as metadata to each of your contacts. So some applications might call these keywords, but in email circles, it's typically called tags. And I've got a video, I think I'll link that in the description below too, that tells you how I implement tags and gives you a structure of how this can work out for you. You're going to need automation. Other people may call this funnels, but basically an automation is something that waits for a trigger and then it starts a sequence of events that takes action based upon that trigger and also things that your contact does inside of that automation. You're going to need SmartLinks. This is the term that's used by Fluent CRM. There may be other terms for this. Basically, a smart link is something that is inside of your email that is a URL. And when somebody clicks that, then your email system can take an action. It might add a tag, it might remove a tag, could add them to a list, remove them from a list, something like that. And of course, that link has to go to a page somewhere. And that kind of confirms that when somebody clicks a link, they need some feedback that something happened. So you don't want to have a link that does nothing. People will just keep clicking it, and thinking this doesn't work. Sequences are the next thing. And a sequence is really a collection of emails that drip out over time. So make sure that if you're looking for an email service provider, you don't have one yet, that they have sequences. Now, the good thing is all of these are fairly popular items. I think you'll probably have success finding them in whatever email provider you're looking for, but just make sure that they have all of these things because each one will become important. And lists are optional, but to me, lists are segmentation. You can do this with tags. I think tags are not optional. Different lists to segment your users based upon their interest or whatever marketing that you may be doing is a good idea, but it's optional. You can take care of the same thing using tags, but lists kind of make things a little bit easier to work with. All right, the next thing you need to worry about is integration. And there's a few integration points to consider. So obviously, if you have an email opt-in form, it has to connect to your email system, your CRM. And those are going to be just basically when somebody fills out the form, it's got to transfer that data to your email system. So that requires an integration. Not every email system integrates correctly with every form. So make sure that your form is compatible with your email system. All right, you may need to connect your email system to other platforms. And what do I mean by that? Do you use a service like Teachable or Searchy? Can you connect your email system to that platform that you send data over, or when something happens on that platform, data comes back? Depending upon the platform you choose, they may have a direct integration, or you may have to use a third party service like Zapier, which is an additional cost. Usually, you can always find a way to do it, and Zapier may be what you need. But some of the more popular software as a service email systems like ConvertKit or MailerLite or Mooseend often have direct connections. But depending on what you've chosen, take a look and see if it connects not only with your forms, but any services that you use where your customers are going to interact. And that's typically if you're doing courses, a membership, or coaching. Payment systems, you're going to want to get money. If you're in business, you need to be paid. And when that happens, your email system is going to need to connect to that as well. So a lot of systems are very simple. As far as the customer is concerned, it gives them a prompt, they can make a payment, but you want to make sure that you can integrate your system. So maybe there's an update when somebody pays. Stripe is a payment system that I use. There's also PayPal. And I've got another video that I did on payment processors that or versus shopping carts that may help you out in understanding what some of the services are. So I mentioned third-party software as a service tools. And again, that's going to be things like where are your customers interacting? If you're using another service, for example, it's not just things that are happening on a course site or a membership site. Maybe you have a community site. So you could be using circle.so or some of the other community services. And if people take action there and they're interacting, you may want to have that go back and update a tag or add somebody to a list on your email system. So that's another place to look out for some integration. All right, obviously, you're going to need an opt-in form. And this is something that your contact fills out to join your email list. This can be very simple or can be very graphic and pretty. You can have motion and all sorts of things. I prefer to keep things rather simple. So that could be something that you do with Fluent Forms, for example. There are a lot of free contact forms that you can find online. I like Fluent Forms better. It's a bit more robust and it does more things. And it also has a free option. You have paid services like Optin Monster, and they will do a lot of things. It's going to cost a couple $100 a year to use a service like that, but it does a lot of different types of forms. The only thing that you require is an email address because you've got to be able to have your contact identified by a unique identifier and you want to email them. So the email address is the logical thing. If you go sign up for a new Dropbox account, the only thing they ask you for is your email address. But everything else is optional, but that doesn't mean it doesn't serve a purpose. So I like to ask for a first name to use in following messages. So when I send an email out to somebody, I'll say like, hi, comma, and then it'll say contact name. So hi, William, hi, Betty, hi, Jerry, hi, Dave, hi, Sally, whatever it is. I like to use people's names, at least at the beginning and sometimes inside the body of the email. And it's just a little personalization factor. I don't really ask for anything else. And the reason for that is this. There's two reasons, actually. One, every other field you ask people to fill out slows down the process of them getting on your email list, which means some people will abandon the form. The other part of it is every bit of data you collect is something that you are required to protect. So I don't want to know people's phone number, their address, or anything else if I don't need it. I'm not mailing things to people. I'm not calling them up. And if I need to call them up, I'll send them an email and ask, hi, would you like to join a call? So I don't collect data that for some reason, hopefully, if I ever get hacked or somebody gets access to my system, they cannot download anything that is really critical or private. Yeah, I don't want them to get the email address or the first name, but those are things that I believe I can protect. So never capture more data than you need. If you don't need it, there's no point in getting it. It makes it harder to capture somebody on your opt-in form. People don't want to spend a lot of time filling out a form just to get a freebie. Email address is all you need. First name is helpful if that's what you use, but it isn't essential. The email address is the only thing that's essential. And as I said, you're responsible for protecting all the user information that you capture. And the tools you can use, I use ConvertBox these days. I have previously used Optin Monster. Elegant Themes has one called Bloom. They haven't updated it in a while, but I think the forms look rather nice. They've got good color combinations there, so they cover the basics, I should say, and it's not very expensive. All right, let's talk about tags. This is a trigger to start the automation. Tags can do a number of things, but in the context of onboarding your people, you want to have a tag that's going to kick off an automation. So I mentioned this in a previous video that I talked about how to use tags, and I'll use system, start, and then whatever it is. And the automation is waiting for that signal. So when somebody gets assigned that tag, it kicks off an automation. Status tags are a type of tag you can use to track progress through the automation. Now, you're going to be adding and removing both your start tags and your status tags during the automation, because once the automation is done, you don't need them. So the trigger tag that starts off the automation, as soon as it starts, the very first thing I do is remove that tag, so it's not going to start the automation again. A status tag happens before some kind of action in the automation. It tells you where somebody is, because if they're within the automation workflow, you want to know where they are. It also helps you in troubleshooting in case something doesn't work the way you expected. History tags are going to be permanent, and those you'll probably add at the same time you add your status tags, but you're not going to delete those in the automation. So somebody downloaded your PDF, you want a history tag that lets you know that. The status tag is going to say the same thing, status, started download or completed download. And it's going to let you know those things. But as you move from one status to the next, or before you end the automation, you're going to remove those status tags. You're not going to remove the history tags. A source tag is useful to let you know how somebody got on your list. So did they download a PDF? Did they get referred by another page where you have maybe a different lead magnet or offer? Did they purchase a product and that's how they got on your email list? So you want to have some kind of a tag that says, where did this person enter your email list? And that can be helpful later. You can also use that for segmenting things, and that's very handy. All right, so I mentioned a list is optional, but it allows segmentation of your audience by really topic or interest. So I mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about sequences, they're a collection of email messages. A list is just a collection of people's email addresses who are interested, or that you're segmenting them for a given purpose or a given interest. So maybe if people are on a wait list for your shopping cart to open for your next launch, then that is a list that you use. So whenever you want to send them your promotional emails, you just send them to that list. You can do the same thing with a tag, but I think lists in this case make that segmentation easier. So it's easy to include or exclude related contacts. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If people purchase one of my courses or they join my membership, then I put them on a list. And if I'm sending off something that is a sales message or a promotional message, I don't want to send that to people who have already made a purchase. So I'll send it to the people that maybe are on a wait list, and I will exclude people who have already purchased. They're on a list as a customer. So that's something you may want to use a list for, is an easy way to exclude people from getting messages. Another way is, we're going to talk about this with SmartLinks, is if they don't want to be added to, or they don't want to receive more promotional emails or something in a certain segment, you can give them a tag or a list that says not interested in whatever the topic is. And it's an easy way to exclude them from getting more and more of the emails that just don't want them. That keeps them from unsubscribing. All right, so you can do the same thing with a tag. And now let's talk about sequences. So these are collections that deliver over time, and they drip out. So you might create a sequence that's could only be a couple of emails, could be 5 emails, could be 35, could be 135, however many you want to do. It depends on the purpose of your sequence. And you just drip them out over a period of time. So that way you're not slamming everybody with all of those emails all at once. They'll probably want to unsubscribe immediately if you did that. The reason I like this is it ensures everyone sees, when you add that sequence, they see every email in it. So somebody who subscribes today and somebody who subscribes 6 months from now are going to see all the same emails. They're going to see them at different times, but they're going to get all the messages that you want to share. Now, that means that these messages should be relevant to the time period that they're in. If you're doing a promotion, you probably only want to do that for a short period of time. But if you're doing a nurture sequence, which is what I'm really discussing here, is something that is kind of evergreen. And that way, if I send it to you now, or if I send it to you in 6 months or a couple of years, it still matters. It's still relevant to what the purpose is of the sequence. And I like the fact that everybody sees the same thing, because that means people who subscribe later don't miss out on what I've already sent other subscribers. So I use a sequence to kind of keep people on the same track to get the same information, even if they get it at a different time. All right, so we talked a little bit about SmartLinks. These are links in your email that communicates back to your CRM, your email system. And when a user clicks the link, you can take an action. So when they click a link, it must go to a page somewhere. Usually I set up a page on my WordPress server that kind of confirms that I got your message. And if they're unsubscribing from something or they're getting off a segment, I give them a message that lets them know you are successful. On the back end system, it will add a tag or remove a tag. It will add them to a list or remove them from a list. Those are usually the only things I need a sequence, or excuse me, a smart link to do. But that's valuable because you're getting information about what a contact wants or does not want. And also, because you can put these things in there that will show about how they can get off of a promotional segment, you're still keeping them on your overall email list rather than having them unsubscribe because they're bored of these messages. So as I said, you can add or remove a tag, you can add or remove from a list. And that takes us right into the automation, or as some services call it, a funnel. So this is a workflow that waits for a trigger and then starts an action. And when you see one, it looks kind of like a flow chart. It goes from the top down. It may have decision points, like an if-then kind of decision point. But mostly, I like to keep mine straight, just moving straight down, like from step by step. So the tags are what I use for a trigger. You could also use a list. And there are other things you can integrate. Like, for example, if you use WooCommerce or Shopify, when somebody purchases a product there, that could be a trigger to start a sequence or an automation that then gives them a welcome message and adds them to a sequence, whatever it is that you need. But purchasing something, adding or removing from tags or lists, those are all things that are triggers that can start an automation so long as you have an integration with your email system. So trigger maybe when a contact gets added or removed. So they just join your email list, that can be the trigger. Purchasing a product is a good trigger. Abandoning a cart could be another trigger. So somebody goes to the cart, they fill out some information, but they don't click the buy button. That is an abandoned cart. You may want to send them a follow-up message. And you've probably seen this happen from other shopping sites that say, hey, it looks like you forgot something. And maybe after a while of prompting you to buy, they say, well, here's a discount code. Maybe that'll prompt you to buy, because they would rather have some money than no money from an abandoned cart. So that's what automations can do for you. They can help you save sales. And you never know why somebody abandons a cart. Maybe they got interrupted. Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe they have other questions that need to be answered. This gives you a chance to follow up with them. So within the automation, you can remove or add tags, lists. You can update your CRM fields. And depending on your CRM, you can probably add fields in there. And there's just a number of different actions you can do. And all of this is giving you a better profile in your email system or your CRM about your customer, about that specific contact. All right, so let's talk about how do you onboard the new subscribers using these tools we just talked about, or the resources. So here's the workflow that I'm recommending. The contact initiates a trigger action. So they join your list, they download something, they buy something, and you're going to add them to a tag, or you're going to add them to a list. And then the trigger starts the automation, because the automation is waiting for that trigger. It's just sitting there perpetually waiting and waiting until somebody gets added to the list, buys a product, or gets a tag that tells them something, or removes a tag. And then that starts the automation. First thing I want to do after that is make sure they don't get added again. So for example, if I'm using a tag to start the automation, after the automation starts, the first thing I do is remove that tag, because they don't need it anymore. It's served its purpose. So you add tags for status, for history, for profile, and as I also mentioned, a source. That could be some of your profile information. You want to know, how did they get started here? What is their status within the workflow of this automation? So the first thing I do, if I'm onboarding somebody to my email list for the first time, I'm going to send them a welcome email. And if they're expecting a PDF or something else, I'm, I'm going to deliver that to them. Now, let me take a step back because there's something before this automation even begins, and it's something you should be using. That is a double opt-in. When somebody subscribes to your email list, you probably find there are two ways that they can join. One is a single opt-in. That's where they just add the email list and automatically you've confirmed them. I don't do that. I like to send a confirmation email that is built into the tool that I use. In my case, is Fluent CRM, and you can find this in other email systems as well, where they have to click a button to confirm that they really wanted to join your email list. And some people don't. Some people stay in pending. You can resend the confirmation, but if they don't confirm, then you don't know if somebody just put in another person's email address hoping that they would get the download or the freebie that you're offering. And that's why I use this. I don't want people on my email list that really don't want to be there. So if they cannot click a button to confirm that, yes, I really want to be here, then they're not a good fit for me. So they stay in pending until I go back and delete them. I'll try to prompt them a few more times. So before you ever get to where you're adding anybody as a real contact that's confirmed, you're not adding any tags, lists, or other stuff until they make that confirmation. So that's the first email they're going to get from your system. After they've been confirmed, then you can start doing all these things as far as triggering stuff, adding them to lists. So the initial welcome email is not the first email they get, but it's an email that you've written that tells them how to get their download. It tells them something about welcome them on board. And there's a formula called catch, and I'll go over that briefly coming up, but that is what you want to use as a structure for your welcome email. You add the user to a list. And again, this is optional. Tags could be all you need, but if you have a list, that is useful and handy. And then you add them to a nurture sequence. So all of these are different steps that are happening in the workflow of your automation. And then that's it. I end the automation right there. That is the automation's role in onboarding. Now the nurture sequence takes over everything else. So trigger actions. Somebody submits an opt-in form, that could be the trigger. You add them to a tag or a list. They purchase a product or service, depending on what you're offering. They click a link in an email, and that goes back to the SmartLinks. They could click that, and that could start off a completely different automation. But those are things that can click off automations. But since we're talking about onboarding, we'll just continue on. Another thing could be the contact's birthday. Maybe when their birthday comes around, that triggers another automation or another email where you just go off, you send them a happy birthday notice. Maybe you send them a discount coupon that's good for a certain period of time. And when they complete an email sequence, that can also be a trigger for yet another automation. Or maybe something, and the automation doesn't have to send them something. It could be just that it updates information inside of their record in your database for the email system. All right, so let's talk about some automation actions. You can send an email. You can start an email sequence, which is the collection that drips out over time. You can wait for a period of time, and sometimes that's happy. If you're not doing a sequence where you've got the wait scheduled in there, maybe you want to wait for a different period of time. You send them an email, wait for a day or wait for 7 days, whatever period you select. Then you send another email, and then you wait for another period. So it's kind of like building a sequence, but you may want to change the interval between these emails, and that's something you can't do with a sequence. It's kind of a fixed thing. So let's go ahead. I shouldn't say you can't do it, but that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're doing here. The sequence, I think, should remain as a fixed length. There are times when you can change from one email to the next, but this is a little different when you're onboarding. So you may want to do this within the automation. Send an email, wait. Send an email after that time is up, wait, or take another action. You can apply or remove a tag or a list. You can update contact properties or fields in your database or the record for that contact. You can add notes, and that could be something automated. It could be something that you're prompted for, but typically I would say it would be automated. They got to a certain point and you want to add a note in their history. And you can start an outgoing webhook. And webhooks are basically ways to communicate between different systems. So maybe you want to create a webhook to Zapier, to Teachable, or to Searchy, something else that's a different service where that is a communication mechanism that sends data from your email system to that software as a service. And then you can do a split, which is if then logic. So when they get to a certain point, you say, if this, follow this path of actions. If not, follow the other path of actions. So it could be looking to see, do they have a tag? Are they part of a list? And is it their birthday? All these other little actions could be something to look for. All right, so as mentioned, we were going to talk about the catch for your welcome email. This is something I got in some training from a gentleman named Bobby Klink, and this is the formula he shared, and I'm going to share it with you. So the first thing you're going to do is C, and catch is an acronym for a few steps. You want to congratulate the decision that they made to get on your email list, to buy a product, to download a PDF, whatever it is that got them to kick off the automation, congratulate them for it. Just make them feel good about the step that they've already taken. Usually somebody gets something on your email list because they either have a pain or a frustration or a problem, and you got to acknowledge that. Your download, your product, your service should be something that you have designed to help people. Well, why do people need help? Because they got a problem. Acknowledge the problem. You should know why you created something out there. And even if the problem is just, they want some funny things, they want to be entertained, well, that's a problem source as well. So think about acknowledging whatever their reason was for getting this. So congratulate them first for taking action, acknowledge the problem or the reason why they took action. Then you come up to this next phase. Say the fact that you downloaded this PDF, the fact that you purchased this product, whatever it is, tells me something about you. And you kind of want to reinforce why they made the decision. So not only do you congratulate them, you mention the acknowledgement of the pain or the problem or the reason. Now you want to say, this tells me something about you, and give them a little bit about what you've learned for the fact that they've gotten on your list through whatever action was they took, a purchase, a download, something. Just kind of say, this tells me something about you. Then don't go too deep into this, but you want to give yourself a credibility boost. So this is where you're talking about yourself, but keeping in mind what I've shared in the past about the story brand framework, I want you to remember, you are not the hero of this journey. Your customer, your contact is the hero of their journey. You are the guide. So you want to let them know why you're a guide, why you're someone who has a plan that can help them going through whatever their pains or problems are. So you can share something about yourself. Let them know why you're trustworthy, but don't go off on a rant about yourself and how great you are. You just want to let them know why you have the credentials to help them with their journey. And that's what you're reinforcing here. You are reinforcing yourself as the guide to help them through their customer journey. And then the hook. So when we talk about an open loop, that basically means you're going to build some anticipation for what's coming next. You want to give them to anticipate the next email rather than just saying, okay, you're on the list now, and leave it there. Whatever the first email is in your sequence that you're going to pass them off to, or the next email that you're going to build if you're doing it, with a wait period, you want to give a hint at it. You want to build a little clue, and you want them to anticipate that something's coming. So they'll be looking for it. That keeps you top of mind in their mind. So when when they want to think about whatever it is that you're known for, whatever it is you do, you want to keep yourself in mind. You don't want to dominate their life, but you just want to be memorable for whatever it is that you're known for. So that hook is an open loop, which means that there's think of it like a cliffhanger. At the end of a movie, it's like, well, wait, they didn't resolve this. No, but in the next movie, they will. This hook, the open loop, is a cliffhanger moving on to the next email. All right, so let's map the customer journey. You're going to remove or add tags as needed. You're going to update notes or contact fields. So your CRM, if you're using one of those, is going to have different fields, and you can add to them to kind of update information. So a basic example of this. When somebody first subscribes, they are a lead in my system. If they purchase something, that type changes from lead to customer, and that is updating a contact field, and that's built into Fluent CRM. You may need to do something different with different fields. If they purchase something, you want to know what that purchase is. You want a record of what they purchased. You may want to have a record of what they downloaded. So these are all things that you can do with fields for your contact. If you need to wait, you can wait, because you don't want to bombard them with things too frequently. One of the main reasons people unsubscribe is you're sending them too many emails. So give them some time between emails. You may want to decide if then based upon the actions or choices that they've made, and then add them to an email sequence. That is my onboarding sequence, or what I do. So the nurture sequence, collection of emails that every subscriber gets no matter when they subscribe. As I said, if you don't have a nurture sequence that is ongoing and you're just sending an email week after week, well, that can work in some cases, but then the people who subscribe 6 months from now don't know what you sent before. They never get that information. In my case, I want people to get all the same information because it's all related to what I talk about with building a high converting website. So for me, something that's evergreen works very well. And that is a collection that every subscriber gets. Other people will do this, and a nurture will be very short, like maybe only 5 emails to kind of get them up to speed. And then they start doing topical weekly emails that they write every week. Or maybe they do monthly digests. But the nurture sequence for me is something that I just keep building. I keep adding to it. Years ago, Pat Flynn mentioned that he has a nurture sequence that had 35 emails in it. And I suspect by now he's probably got more in that sequence. So to me, onboarding with this nurture sequence is important to keep it going for evergreen topics. And one of the reasons is I deliver on the same day of the week, once a week. And that means that they see an email from me. At the top, I've got my little logo there for Suburbia Press. Or if for one of my memberships, I've got the logo for the membership. And they see something that just reminds them that I'm there. If that could be something where they put my messages in a folder, and if they ever need to go back to them, there's information that is of value. It's not always just trying to sell them something. It's just like, here's what you do and why you do it and how you do it. So it could be any number of things, but that's why I like having a long sequence that just keeps people getting some value from me over time. Make it as short or as long as you wish. So if you don't want to have a long sequence, you don't have to, but there's at least basic information you want these people to know that you're helping them. One of the ways to do that is if you gave them a download, and maybe it's an ebook with a few different chapters, those emails could be one about each chapter. Kind of unpack the value of the freebie that they just got. Tell them different ways to use it. If they bought a product from you, tell them different ways to use it, little tips, tricks, whatever it is that you want to share with them, but give them some information related to what they downloaded at a bare minimum. And at the end, you can create a trigger to notify another automation that they completed a sequence. Here's why you may want to do that. Maybe after they finish one sequence, you want that trigger to start another sequence. So the trigger starts a workflow, the workflow adds them to another sequence. You add some history that says completed sequence 1, started sequence 2. And that way you kind of have atomic automations. If you're trying to do all the things in one automation, it's going to break at some point, and you're not going to know where it broke. That's why I put the status tags in there, the history tags, and that's why each automation really just does one thing. And then when you're finished that thing, you can kick off another automation. One of the things that some people recommend is do a 4 or 5 email nurture sequence about what they downloaded, and then do 4 or 5 emails about your welcome message, telling them more about you or your site. And I don't really care for that so much because, again, that is your hubris rather than serving them. You've already told them in the welcome email why you can, be a good guide. I think in a longer nurture sequence, you're demonstrating why you are a good guide. You don't have to tell them. You don't have to beat them over the head saying how great I am. Here's all my certifications or whatever else it is, how long I've been in business. They just want to know that you know your stuff. Well, to me, that's why a long nurture sequence about the topics in your niche is what really tells them you know your stuff. You show it rather than tell them. All right, so that is it. To recap, we talked about the resources you need, and those are the things that you're going to want to make sure you have inside of your email system and what integrates with your email system. How to onboard new subscribers. We talked about tags and lists. We talked about the triggers for the automation. We talked about email sequences and other things like that. And that's all I got to say about that. So let's click back over here, because I always screw something up on these lives, and so far I haven't made any terrible mistakes, but you never know. So that's one of the fun things about watching me live. So I said we're going to talk a little bit about different ways to do it. You've seen the way that I like to do it. I like to give them a welcome email using the CATCH acronym to welcome them in and kind of give them a bit of structure. And then I start with the sequence of emails that are related about what I serve and how I serve them. And in my case, I serve home-based small businesses who want to create a high converting website. Every email I send in that nurture sequence is about that, to serve that audience. There are other people who have a different way of doing their email list, and sometimes they just make money from their email list, and they do it on a timely basis. So for example, you could have a current events or a current state of the industry, something like that, list that means you're going to be writing an email every week rather than just doing it all at once, batching it, and then putting it out. But it's going to be current. And if that's what serves your audience, then I recommend you do that. So you're going to have a shorter nurture sequence, and then you start telling them what's current. So for example, I have a photography website and I have an email list there. So I could do something like top 5 tools this week in photography, top 5 flashes, top 5, whatever you want it to be. It could be a top 5 thing. And you can do a top 5 in a long-term nurture sequence if it helps your customers. But if you want to be topical about what's going on this week in search engine optimization, for example, then you need to be current and you do it on a weekly basis and you write those emails, and that's what your audience expects from you. So you can do it a different way than having everything batch processed and ready. You can do it where it's topical. If that suits your market, then that's what I recommend you do. But give it some thought. I think there are pros and cons to both ways of doing it. But for my audience and what I'm doing, everything is pretty much evergreen. And if there is something that is topical, nothing says I can't create an email campaign and send them another email. I don't have to only send them what's in the email sequence. If I do promotions, I can do that when I'm ready to open the cart for the membership, for example, or if I have a new course that comes out, and I can start a promotional sequence. And that's where SmartLinks really come in handy, because maybe somebody isn't interested in my promotional emails. So I can put a little smart link in there that says, if you're not interested in joining my membership, click here and I won't send you anything about it again. And then they won't get the rest of those things, but they'll stay on my nurture sequence, which keeps going and going. And then when there's another promotion, then for maybe a different product, then they can get those and they may be interested. Or maybe they're interested in my promotion that I had, but not at the time that I sent it. You know, if it opens up again another 6 months, they may be interested then. So you can put time parameters on those smart links or whatever tag or list you add them to, and then maybe you let them come back around on the next promotion. So there are different ways you can do this, but for onboarding, you want to get a trigger, send them a welcome email following the CATCH formula, and then get them on a nurture list. And the length of that list depends upon what best serves your audience and your customers. All right, thanks very much. I will not see you again next week because I'm traveling, but I should be back here the following Thursday. So we'll talk to you then.